Improving your website for accessibility is one of these things which we as designers and web developers don't really want to do because we don't feel like we're making progress. But I realized we kind of have to, because according to data, 16% of world population has some kind of disability. And that is huge. That means that if 1,000 people visit your website, up to 150 people could have difficulty navigating your website if it's not optimized for accessibility. So when I learned about that, I was like, okay, I have to take this seriously, I have to do research, and I have to share something about it. Another big benefit of optimizing your website for accessibility is that it actually improves your Google ranking. Because with accessibility, you have to link things together, and that helps Google to understand your website better. And another reason why you should take it seriously is that in Europe and in the USA, there are now laws in place that require businesses to have accessibility on their website. And these things are growing, and I don't know how hard they're actually checking it, but there have already been multiple lawsuits. So if you're working for clients that have bigger businesses, that basically have more to lose, then this is really important. But again, you're also leaving money on the table because more people have it than what we probably think. So let's try to make our websites a little bit better by applying some very simple tricks. That's what I prepared for you in this video. I'm using Elementor here, but these things also apply if you use another page builder. And before we get started, yes, I know Elementor has launched their accessibility plugin. I got some questions about this, so I will also include this in the video. Okay. The first thing you should do is make sure that you actually use the HTML tag for all of your headings on the website. So by default, if you drag in a heading in Elementor, it automatically becomes an H2. And most people ignore this and then they just go to style and then they just style the text from here, or of course via global styling. So this is also what I teach, to set up the styling of your headings over here. And that actually gives you the freedom to then still change your HTML tag without it influencing the styling. So in a situation like this, where we are on an about page, we have the Our Story over here. Most people would put this on an H1 because it's the biggest title. But it is better to make this an H2 because what is actually the H1 in terms of content? It is this one, the About. You want Google to know that this is the most important heading on your page because we're on the About page. So this one should be an H1, even though it is linked to a different styling. In this case, title 7. By the way, soon with Elementor v4, this will all be different. We're gonna then style our typography with classes, but for now with Elementor v3, this is what I recommend. So generally, it is better to use H1 once per page for the main title so that Google knows what this page is about, then H2 for the major sections. So for example, over here, our team, that then should be an H2. And then smaller titles should be even lower. And then H4 to H6, you rarely use them unless you're making a blog. So this is what I mean. In a blog, you have the big H1, you have smaller titles, even smaller ones, super small ones. You need more content structure because it's a big block of text. But for most websites where it's just a section after a section, you don't really need that. So you're probably okay with H1, H2, and H3, maybe sometimes H4. Again, not for styling, just for content hierarchy. So this is easy to apply. Let's go to the next one. This is also something that I always saw, but I never did, which is adding alt text. So if you click on an image, you always have this one over here, the alternative text. And it's basically an alternative way to understand what the image is about if you cannot clearly see the image. And this is also great for people that are using screen readers. So screen readers are things that read the stuff on the website for people that have bad eyes. And so they don't really look at the website, they listen to it. Apparently a lot of people do that. And so in this box, you then type what this image is about. So 2 ladies on scooters in the city. That is what I would type here, and it's automatically saved by WordPress if you make a change. So yeah, it is quite a bit of work to do that for every image. So I discovered that with that paid plugin from Elementor, you can let AI do it, but that's a paid feature. Just clicking and typing something is of course free. And in this same area of describing things, you can also improve descriptive link text. So let's say we have a section right here that gives more information on this scooter. And then at the end, you want to link to more information about it, okay? So normally you would do something like this: learn more about our scooters here. And then you would link the here to another page. But for people that use screen readers, this gets separated. And so the link itself doesn't really say a lot. And so then it's better to just make this whole part a link: learn more about our scooters. And you could even do this in buttons, but then a lot of buttons become big. Let's just quickly try it for fun. Yeah, so that's not a solution for buttons, as you can see. So in buttons and icons, you actually have another option. So first you put in your link. So let's say you want to link to this page. And then inside of the link options, there's custom attributes. And in here, you could add something like this: area label, learn more about our scooters. I mean, this button is get notified, but it doesn't matter. You get the point. This is where you add that text and not inside of the actual text, because otherwise it's going to be too long. And like I said, the same thing is true for icons. You also have this custom attribute, which you can use for that. And by the way, now that I'm thinking about it, this solution is actually also better for general user experience, because the reality is that many people don't read all of the text. And so if this would just say, learn more, and you're scanning through it, you're like, oh, not this link, not this link. But if it says this, then it's easier for your eye to quickly scan as well. So this probably increases click-through rate as well. So yeah, enough about this point. Let's move on to the next one. The next tip is using rem instead of pixels for font sizes. I know many of you already do this, but if you are still using pixels for your font sizes like this, whether you do that right here or in the global typography, then I would recommend to switch to rem. Actually, rem is also easier to work with because the numbers are a lot lower. It is based on your base font. So one rem is 16 pixels. 16 pixels is the default for the web for normal body text. You can change your root font, but most people don't do that. So 1 rem is 16 pixels, so 2 rem is 32. So this already improves your website accessibility a lot, because with rem, you allow the users to increase the size of the font if they want. So let me quickly demonstrate. This one is based on pixels. This one is based on rem. 3 rem is exactly 48, so they are exactly the same size. But if we would view this on the front end and somebody thinks that everything looks a little bit too small, maybe they're a little bit older, their eyes are not so good, and they would change the font size in their browser settings to a little bit larger, then you can see what happens. The rem actually adapts and the pixel one still stays the same. You can check this with a quick font checker here, 48, and the rem is now scaled up to 60 because of this browser setting. So putting all of your fonts in rem is much better. It's exactly the same result for people that have the setting on medium, which is normal, but you do make your website more accessible. And these days I'm actually going even a step further and I'm combining rem with clamp, which is even cooler, because with clamp combined, it actually shrinks automatically all the way from desktop to mobile. I don't know if you can see it, but pay attention to that heading. Right now it starts out at 60, but then when I start scaling it down to mobile and then check it again, you will see that it's 48. So this means that I don't have to set up a specific size for tablet or whatever breakpoint. I just set up the desktop and the mobile, and then all of the sizes in between automatically adapt. I can make a separate tutorial about this, but there are already many tutorials on YouTube about this, so please check that, because it makes your life easier and its responsive perfection. Another tip, which is very simple to apply, is to make sure that your header, your footer, and your main content area has the tag for it. So in the same way as you can give typography an HTML tag, you can also do that for your header. So right now I'm inside of my header template. Normally, most websites, you only have one of these bars, right? So then you would think that you can go in here, additional settings, HTML tag, and give it a header. But a little tip is that it's better to do that on the page level, kind of the template level. So in this case, I have two bars, right? So then would you give both of them the header tag? No, because then it looks like there are two headers. So it's better to then go in here, header settings, and make sure that the HTML tag over here is always on header. The same for the footer. So don't do it on the container, do it via here. And the reason why that is because people who use screen readers, they can then skip the menu and go straight to the content area because they don't want to read out the whole menu every time on every page. So if you don't set this up, the experience for using your website is not going to be nice. But it's not only the header and the footer, you also need to give each page the main tag, because otherwise these accessibility tools don't know where the real content of the page starts. And by default in WordPress, each page already has that main tag. But a problem is that with Elementor, most people set up all of their pages with the page layout Elementor full width. But this feature removes that main tag. And most Elementor users, including me, use the full width feature all the time, because if we don't do that, if we put it on default theme, it actually shows the page title over here, which is of course not what we want because we design our pages with Elementor. And so there's two options to solve this. First is to do it page by page. In the page settings over here, you can actually hide the title like that, but there is a global way to do it, and that is via the theme settings. So if you use the Hello Elementor theme, which most Elementor users use, then you have this theme settings option over here. And in here, there's actually this option, disable the page title for the full website. So if we save these changes and then go back to our about page, and we can still see our header and our footer template that we made with Elementor. So now we have the best of both worlds. We have accessibility and a full Elementor design. Okay, so apparently these very nice, clean looking forms are without labels are actually not great for accessibility. If you would use an accessibility plugin to check, it would probably say like, hey, your fields are missing labels, okay? So you know that inside of Elementor Pro, the form widget, you have the label and then the placeholder. But many designers, they love this clean look, right? It doesn't have labels. But it's not great for accessibility. So it's better to just add the labels and then in the placeholder, I don't know, put something else like this, and then put an actual placeholder in here. So let's say like this, name at domain. This is better because without the labels, these tools don't understand what field they are working with. And also, by the way, here in the left panel, if you don't have a label, it just says item. So just makes it a little bit easier to find stuff. All right, so now I have improved my form a little bit. You can, of course, play around with the spacing and any of the styling here. Another little thing that you can do to make it more clear is add a helper text. So if the title is not really clear what people should do, then just add a little bit more text. For example, type of vehicle. Just make it clear. Another thing is that if a field is required, you can turn it on over here. Elementor makes it optional for you to have the required mark. And yes, it will give you an error if you try to fill out the form, but it's a little bit more annoying if the user finds that out after they fill everything out, because then you get an error and that's not a nice feeling. So make sure your required mark is on so people know from the start which fields they should absolutely fill out. All right, so these were very simple tips, right? There's nothing hard. Anybody can do this. It doesn't ruin your design, because that's often what people say with accessibility, that it can ruin your design. But I actually made the website a little bit more usable right now for everyone. So yeah, that's that. But now we can go a step further by installing a plugin. And Elementor actually made one. So I sent Elementor a message and I was like, yo, what is this all about? This Ele web accessibility plugin. They basically said this plugin just helps you to optimize your website and it gives the users some tools. So this thing that you see here in the corner, that then gets added to your website. And this then gives people the option to do a few things. So I'm just quickly going to install that on my website and then we're going to test it out. All right, if you search for Ele, then you will see it right here. It already has 300,000 installs. It's pretty new. The ratings are all right. Maybe they still need to improve some things. They were pretty early with this. I haven't seen a lot of other solutions. So now if you install it, you get this little option right here. And you can get started by connecting it to your Elementor account. They do offer one install for free. I want to talk about this pricing a little bit later. Let's first check it out. But I did buy a Plus subscription in order to test this. So let's approve and connect. And the main thing here is that it adds a bubble to your website. So let's check it out. If we go to my home, it should already show up in the corner. Yes, this is the default one. You can change the styling. But it just pops up this, okay? So one of the interesting things you can do is that you can pause the animations. So on this website, I actually did quite a bit of animations to make it look cool. So let's check it out. This is what happens when you load the website. Yeah, I love this kind of stuff, but not everybody loves it. You see all kinds of stuff is animating in. So if we do pause the animations and then we refresh it, then you will see that there are no animations. And even if we scroll, the content is already there. Okay, we still have a little bit of scroll animations, but that will probably not be a problem. And the reason why this is here is because many people can actually get motion sickness from this, some kind of dizziness. For some people, it's just too overwhelming. And honestly, some websites that are like super crazy, like this kind of stuff, this is not a website. This is like an interactive experience, which is cool to look at, but it's not really easy to navigate, right? So those kind of things, it turns people crazy, so now they can turn it off. This is actually very similar to the reduce motion setting that is part of Mac OS. So even the animations inside of Mac OS for some people are already too much, and therefore Mac also gives you this option, and there's even a contrast improver. So similarly to Mac OS, they also provide bigger font features. So you can just click and then increase the size. And let's scroll up to see this plugin even overrides the pixels, which is quite smart. Because this one is also scaling, as you can see. So Ele is doing some kind of trick to make sure that everything is bigger. There are 4 steps. You can go really far and you can just turn it off by clicking through it. Line height is also one of these things which you can increase. Many people have not enough line height on their website because many designers don't like big text blocks, so they often just make the line height too small, but then it becomes harder to read. So yeah, you can just increase that with this plugin as well. Text align. Yeah, some web designers, they have very big blocks of text and then middle aligned, which is not very nice. I always try to reduce that by just making the column less wide. But in this plugin, people can then just decide to left align all of the text. Yes, it ruins the design a little bit, but if people really want to get to your content and some of it that is bothering them, then this can be great. There's a few more things in here. Contrast improver. Let's test that. Whoa. Okay, so there are a few options here. So if your website has a really bad contrast, then they can improve it. Many designers like to use very soft colors, which is not always good for readability. There's even a grayscale option if your website is too colorful, because that can also trigger people. Highlight links is an interesting one. This here at the top is because of WordPress, but here are links, and then we can see that link that we just added. Makes it easier for people to find. Again, this is not for pretty purposes. There is a page structure so people can find the headings more easily. This is why you should set up that H1 to H6. As you can see, quite a bunch of cool features in here, but these features from the blue overlay don't actually solve accessibility issues. So I also checked out the scanning feature, which helps you to find what's wrong, and it also helps you to improve with AI. So I have started to scan my homepage for possible improvements. I see that I don't have alt text on these images, but these images are not really needed for people to understand the website. So I'm marking them as decorative, and then I can just resolve this issue. But most images do actually need some alt text, as I've showed before. So this is the place where Ali actually suggests these changes, and then you can use AI to generate ideas for alt text for you. Okay, so now the alt text is checked. Let's go to the next one. Keyboard and assistive technologies. I see that the actual link of my logo doesn't describe the purpose of it. And as we know by now, links should describe their purpose so that it makes it easy to navigate the website. So you can let Ali do it with AI. You can see the text here, visit Scooty Ali homepage. That's the purpose of this logo link, so that makes sense. But you can of course also add an area label manually, as I've showed before in this video. So it's honestly really nice that AI can just help you to solve many of these issues. And then we can see page structure and navigation, and this is all wrong on this website because I made this recording before I changed the page layout to theme. So after I changed the page layout to theme, those issues were gone. Then the heading structure. I see that there are multiple H1s on this page, which is not good because there should only be one H1 per page. And this is because I also used an H1 inside of these loop items. But that's not really needed because it's not a single post template, and therefore I'm changing it to an H3 with their built-in feature. But I did check out the code and I saw that they don't actually change the H tag with this feature. They just change the area label to another level. So you could do it like this, but you could of course also go back into your loop item template and then just changing it manually. Then the last thing that I saw on this website is that the color contrast was not great. My text was actually too light. And so here you can just play around with these sliders in order to make the contrast better. But just know that this data is saved inside of the Ali plugin. So if you see that your contrast is too low, it's better to change your colors in the site settings themselves. So honestly, I really like this scanning feature because it just makes this whole experience a little bit nicer, because it's not the most fun task to do, and Ali makes it a bit easier, especially if you have to do this on many websites. And then let's quickly take a look at some of the features here, because you can customize it a little bit. So if you go into the design mode right here, you can put it on your own brand color, which is very nice. You can even change the icon. I think this one is pretty universal and pretty cool, but you have some options here, even the size, the corner radius if you want to make it a square, the position, in what corner you want it, because maybe in the right corner you already have a chat. Many websites have that, so you can put it in another corner, or even put it next to your chat by just playing around with these values. I would recommend to not put the chat and the accessibility in the same corner. Like Elementor has it here, it's pretty nice. A chat over here and then accessibility in the left corner. Another thing is that you can turn off some of the features. So if you really don't like some of the features, then you can turn them off. But again, don't be too judgmental here. Different people use websites in a different way. But if you really think something doesn't work for your specific website, then you can turn them off right here to not show all of the options. And then there are two generative features. The first one is a statement. This is nice. So in the same way as many companies are now required to have a privacy policy on your website, this maybe in the future will also be required for European and American companies. I'm not sure yet. I'm not an expert on the law, but it is good to highlight how you take accessibility seriously. So this feature helps you to create a page on your website, which basically shows like, hey, I take this seriously. This is what I do for my customers. So you can generate a page right here. So if you fill out this info, it will just quickly generate a page over here in the same way as you can generate a privacy policy, and then you can edit that page with Elementor, and then you can link it in your footer. But by default, it will also automatically be linked over here. If you set it up, let me show you in Elementor, you see the statements also linked over here. So I think the features that they offer are pretty cool, but I also have two little improvements that they can do. I know that they offer a scanning feature, which is great. You can scan each page. In the free version, you can scan 5 pages, so then they will suggest improvements for you. But to put a solid blue button this big on the pages overview in WordPress, that's a little bit too much for me. I don't want to see this button all the time when I go to my pages overview. So I would ask Elementor to make this button just an outline button or a little link so that it's not so much in your face. I personally don't like it when plugins just add stuff to the dashboard without really giving us an option to change that. And I checked the settings, I couldn't find a way to turn that off. And the second thing that I think Elementor can improve in terms of clarity is the pricing. So let's talk a little bit about this and the pro version and the free version basically, because what it says right here is that it's free, but it only says one site. But free kind of like suggests that you could use it on every site, right? But once you install the plugin, you have to connect it to your Elementor account. And so the question is, can we now use it on every single website, or can we just use it for free if it's connected to a separate Elementor account? But what about agencies that manage multiple Elementor Pro websites under one Elementor account? Can we then only do one website for free? So this is not clear to me, and it's up to Elementor whether they're going to make this a paid plugin or a free plugin. Of course, everybody wants it to be free, but that's up to them. That's their business, right? And I think this plugin, whether the free or the pro version, will mainly be used for businesses that take accessibility seriously, that have quite a bit of customers. So they probably care more about having a good website than a few dollars more per month. And what if you have 100 websites and you really want to do this for all of your clients? I know there's agencies who manage more than 100 websites. So do we then have to buy 4 of these packages? And so the pricing for agencies becomes better because this comes down to a little bit more than $1 per month per website, which if you sell maintenance packages to clients, then it's kind of doable. And probably many companies want this on their website. So you can offer it as an extra service, charge money for it. You should, because it actually costs money. I think it would be nice if you can just run this plugin with the basic features for free without connecting your account, because I feel like it just happens on the front end. I don't think it will cost Elementor a lot of money to run this plugin, but I'm not exactly sure. Okay, I just would like to have a little bit more clarity on the pricing. So what is going to happen? Are we going to offer this to clients now? Well, I think for some clients we kind of should consider this. Again, we don't have to pay for this ourselves. We can just let clients pay for it. The question is, do clients see the value in this? But I think it's also our job to educate them a little bit and say like, hey, 15% of the people on this planet have some kind of disability. So it is important that this is also part of the process. Should we absolutely include it in every project? I don't know. What do you think? Like, please let me know in the comments. I'm trying to wrap my head around this as well. I'm trying to educate myself. I will probably ask Elementor as well. When I had that conversation with them, they did offer me a 10% discount code. So I said, that's nice. I will of course share that. So you can get 10% off with the discount code Reno10. Okay. I hope you learned something in this video and can apply some of these things on your project. I certainly have a list of points that I can improve on my own website. We'll see what happens. Maybe I will make a follow-up video. For now, I want to thank you for watching.